So we're made up of a diverse group of students. We have 2 MBA students who are concentrating in sustainable food. We have a dually MBA MPH student, a master's in engineering student, and then I'm a doctor and also getting my MPH this year. Our mentor is Arding. Oh, this. Sorry.
Just to be sure, Sam, stop the recording and start again.
Yeah, we'll
All right. So, hold on. Yeah. So just one more admin question. So, Alan, please stop the recording and have restarted.
Okay, yeah.
Because if we don't stop after every team, you're going to have a 3-hour video you got to edit,
Alright.
which no one should want to do. So stop.
Recording stopped.
Now start it again for every team, and then stop at the end, and then you'll find it infinitely easier.
Recording in progress.
Perfect.
Now we're recording.
Welcome, Ambrosia.
Yeah.
Alright. We'll work things out better.
Okay. So just wanted to give an overview of our idea. So our customer base are high-income individuals who are looking for personalized diet recommendations. And we're solving a need for lack of personalized and accessible education on how diet can impact an individual's health, and just the difficulty that people have with making suitable food choices to meet their needs. So the product is a AI-driven digital nutritionist. So it's generating personalized meal plans and also incorporating wearable devices, personal laboratory tests like genetics, medical history, lifestyle habits, and preferences. We conducted 14 interviews this week. It was a diverse range of different people that we interviewed. There were 6 health-conscious consumers, 3 physicians, 2 nutritionists, 1 athlete, 1 creator of a similar type of app, and 1 digital marketing expert. So a couple of our hypotheses that we tested. For the customer, again, we're targeting a health-conscious individual that lacks the ability to find personalized nutrition. But we learned that most health-conscious consumers are already using diet-related apps like MyFitnessPal, and that the market is pretty saturated in that sense for that target market. We also learned that there might be a need for a specific medical condition, for people who have a specific medical condition, to focus on an app that is giving them recommendations for their health condition. And then common themes included speed, ease of use, affordability, portion control, the effect of the microbiome, and incorporation of weight loss medications and Ozempic. Value proposition that we tested were that individuals would want tailored recipe recommendations to align with their goals. But we found through our interviews that customers weren't necessarily looking for recipes. They're more focused on how and where to access foods and what's available given their schedule, income preferences, if they're traveling, etc. We initially wanted to partner with technology companies, like wearables like continuous glucose monitor, microbiome stool samples, but we found by talking to customers that at the current price point, wearables are inaccessible for many users. Our initial idea for the channel that users would be a direct-to-consumer type of app. But one thing that we noted during our interviews, especially with the medical experts, is that physicians cite a lack of nutrition education during their patient visits, and also a lack of time to educate patients about nutrition. So we thought about the possibility of selling business to business to providers themselves, to healthcare companies or insurance companies. And we also found that customers really value scientific sources of information, like well-known medical hospitals and physicians rather than social media. This is just a quick overview of our business model canvas. So we're focusing on our value props and customer segments, and especially our customer segments for the next week. Our MVP, initially we're thinking of showing a PDF style handout that we can show customers that will kind of basically show the output based on their medical history and personal preferences, lifestyle. So we give overall nutrition recommendations, meals, and recipes. And then later stage, we would look into a Wizard of Oz style wireframe that highlights all of our different features that we want to use. The market size, this was taken from Glider. So the total addressable market for just nutrition in general is 16.4 billion. And then the served available market is 8.2 billion, and that's focusing more on using food as medicine for chronic disease. The target market for our specific idea using a personalized approach is 2 billion. Initially, when we were speaking with our mentor, he felt like this was a pretty large number for an app-based service, but if we design more of a platform with more services, we feel like this could be a relevant number for us. And we're not able to calculate the Y1 to Y3 revenue because we haven't really figured out our revenue stream yet. One notable thing that we found this week is that there are a lot of competitors in the market already. And there are some companies that are doing very similar things already with personalized nutrition, focusing on chronic medical conditions. And so it's made us kind of think about how we can be unique and offer something that other companies are not. For next week, our hypotheses that we plan to test, we want to see if focusing on a specific medical condition will show a clear path to market. Plan to kind of interview customers who might have certain chronic medical conditions to see if they would use an app like this. And then we also want to test a direct-to-business model, selling to medical providers, nutritionists, or healthcare organizations. And we plan to test that by interviewing those experts in the medical field. And then we also just want to get a better idea of the value prop, so what exactly customers are looking for in the type of personalized nutrition app. And if they would benefit and want more information regarding like weight loss medication, gut microbiome, nutrition labels. And then we also want to explore more of our revenue model so that we can have a better idea of our market. So we're going to ask customers about if they would prefer a monthly subscription to a one-time fee. So the plan for next week are to test these hypotheses, continue interviewing a diverse range of customers, medical providers, and industry experts, update our MVP, and then do more competitor research to figure out what the gap in the market is and how our product would be more unique.
Thank you. So the way we're going to try and run these slides, this week we're kind of going to be quiet, let you do all the slides, but the instructor who had office hours, in this case Ambrosia and I, we had office hours, will kind of moderate the beginning of the conversation. And when you put up a slide in future weeks, don't read it to us. Tell us what's remarkable, what's different, what you didn't expect, or frankly, what confirms something that was a critical assumption. So it's okay this week because we're all kind of getting into it. One thought for the team is if the market is proliferated with lots of interesting products and services, there are opportunities to not build a product or service, but to be that recommendation engine, to be the evaluator, to be the place to go to find, well, which one's for me? I've got type 2 diabetes and I've got these other challenges. What might you recommend for my uses? Now, that might not be the business you want to be in or wanted to be in, but in a lot of fragmented markets, there's a real value to that recommendation layer, which, by the way, can be very AI intensive, to understand how to think about these choices, which ones might be best for you, and maybe even be an intermediary as a distributor, not necessarily manufacture any of these things. So I think you should just be open to understanding, how did you find the ones you want? Was that an easy thing to find? What might make the finding better? You know, products are okay, finally got my Oura ring. Well, what else did you think about? And how did you make that decision? So, you know, CNET probably does some of that stuff, but it's not an answer, it's just a way of reimagining a complexity in a marketplace and a possible fit of how you can add some value to that. Jerry, please.
Yeah, could you show us your pedal diagram? Thank you very much. This is a general comment for the class, in terms of the use of a pedal diagram. You know, we call this thing a competitor assessment, but really, it's much more than that, right? These aren't really just your competitors, it's really a landscape of topography of the market. And so, as a backup to this, you should have, through secondary research, not primary research, a real understanding of the landscape that you gave us verbally, probably quantified by revenue, growth rate, you know, types of offering. And then the key thing visually for us is to bring forward which of these within the pedal diagram are competitive. As you view the service now, Jim was saying, oh, you might be in a different, you know, product or service, but as you anticipate your view today, who are your competitors? And who are your most likely collaborators, adjacencies, you know, friendly competitors who might complement you initially? And so you give this depth and texture. And that's true for everybody in the room, right? So it's understanding the landscape, not viewing it as win-lose, but viewing it as something you're going to build as a resource to you as much as a problem.
And Jerry's point of quantify how big are the pedals, but also in some cases how much money they raised. Right? You might find that Whoop is not a competitor, but they've raised $200 million. Now that may be encouraging or discouraging, but that's another dimension in its. As the pedal diagram has evolved, there's a lot of different things and temperatures you may want to take. So, you know, what the AI has done is give you a preliminary sense of the players and the sizes. It's no mean that they're the right pedals or that they're properly defined pedals. But this is a good overview of the landscape as we understand it today with the uncertainties we're going to try to tackle. The other thing we're going to ask for Alan and Sam to do is, as a timer, is to just say, at 8 minutes, today it's going to be 8 minutes in, you have 2 minutes. So we can wrap up, and then we're going to have our questions coming at the end. So, you know, thank you for being first and for going through this. And in terms of the peer comments also, if Alan and Sam find any that are particularly noteworthy, now would be a time to call one of them out or two of them out if they found them. Alan, Sam, anything jump out at you?
Cool, yeah, we're getting the next one to queue up.
Okay, the next one's queued up. So the answer is no.
Not right now.
But ordinarily, someone from the back row or someone from the front row will do that. The other thing is, have you all input your comments? Because one of the things that we're going to see in the metric, this is kind of different than most Haas classes I know. This is your class participation. It's putting in a comment and hopefully putting in a good comment. That's the leaderboard. But if you're here now, you don't have to do it now. But we expect that by tomorrow, you will have had something worthwhile to share with Ambrosia, the same way the Ambrosia team will find something worthwhile to share with each of you.
If I can add to that, Jim, when you look at that pedal diagram, what you add doesn't have to be you know, God's gift to humanity, right? You might just look at that pedal diagram and be able to say, I've encountered Wellery, and this is something you might want to know about this. Or I've encountered Lincoln, and I happen to know the VP of marketing there, or whatever. So, you know, your inputs don't have to be like insights, brilliant insights. They can simply be, how can you relate to their problem, and what help can you give that team? And they'll be telling you by all the things they tell you in the presentation. So as if something occurs to you as you're seeing a presentation, offer it up right through the vehicle that's been provided. And then you can come back next week and thank those people for their presentation. Thank you very much.
So thanks.
Daniel from Operate.
I before upgrade starts, let's stop the recording, and then we'll start it again. And on the timer, also we'll get that going here, guys. It is week 1, day 1. It's gonna run like clockwork soon. And we have another guest in the back row who did not introduce himself.
Yeah, me.
Yeah, it's mine.
Yeah, sure. I'm Boris Selman. I'm a visiting student researcher here. I'm from Hungary originally, where I'm a PhD student. And I just wanted to ask you after the class, but then I'm asking you. So I'm just wondering if you discuss with you participate in this class.
We'll talk after the
Oh
class.
yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So we can start the recording?
Yes. Started already, yeah.
Upgrade.
Okay. Good night. My name is Daniel, and I'm part of Upgrade. So the team is composed by 5 people: Puneet, Shiv, Kumar, and Harim. And we want to address one specific problem about the educational sector. So we want to try to address the challenges and inconsistencies that grading, the traditional grading, outcomes for students, but also for professors. We want to apply artificial intelligence to improve that learning process, but also to simplify all the processes that professors in universities, K-12, and so on, educational levels faces. So we interviewed 10 people this week, and we gathered some notable quotes, one positives and some negatives. The first one is, I would be happy if AI helps me to reduce 30% of the time it takes me to correct exams. This was a GSI from this university. Also, from K to 12, most students have the same educational system and processes, so it would be nice to have some insights around that learning experience. This was a director in Singapore. Also, grades takes away time of teachers. It's not assigning as much as homework, creating lessons plans, and creating exams. This was a former K to 12 teacher. We also interviewed some educational tech experts from consultancy and firms. And they also challenged our solution because it was not scalable, not flexible, and it will take a lot of money to customize the experience from each educational level. So some of the customer insights. Again, these are like the user profiles that we interview. A research in education, US, universities from Peru, Singapore, and the US. From K to 12, students from Singapore, Peru, and the US. So the expectations on the hypothesis that we wanted to test or validate were like, if this is a current problem that professors face or not. Second, if they are like able to share existing software that they are currently used, like Blackboard, Google, Canvas, and so on. Understand the pain points of these professors, or also like the outcome and the impact on students. And finally, assess how scalable is going to be the solution to implement. Some of the key insights that we actually found out is that this specific problem that we want to address is a current situation in many of the K-12 and university segments. Professors see AI as a powerful tool, however they have some doubts about how reliable it's going to be the engine, how flexible, and how much money could take to the institution to actually implement this type of solution. We also have some competitors that we're going to talk about later that are currently trying to address this problem, probably not in the best way as possible by the moment. I'm not going to run through the whole canvas, but we are like, basically, I want to focus on the value proposition. This is for the teachers specifically, so providing feedbacks on the classroom performance, reducing their burden and student bias when they are grading exams, and establishing streamlined communication channels. And also, of course, the end goal here is to improve the learning experience for students. So perhaps providing the analytics and tools and understand which are the gaps that they have compared to the median of the class or so on. So for an MVP, at least an initial MVP, we're trying to build a website, like a very simple website to actually understand how desirable our product is. We want to also invest a little bit in Google search to understand if this is like a common trend in the educational sector, that we want to try to find solutions, perhaps using AI to this specific problem. we're going to have like a specific button inside the website to the users or the potential customers input some exams or provide like a demo to understand if we could actually provide them a good experience or not. And this is roughly the initial idea that we have at the moment. Okay, so in terms of market size, this is based on global edtech market. The total addressable market right now is around like 140 billion globally. Then we narrow it a little bit to the served available market, which is around like 6 billion. It's basically the segments that actually use AI in their solutions or like in their grading processes or in any way. And the target market is around 3 billion, mainly narrowing to the US, North America, Europe, and Asia. This is a roughly estimation of the revenue. I don't want to talk a lot about this because it's very roughly. Perhaps later in the questions if it's jump. In terms of competitions, we're basically focused ourselves in the EdTech AI grading. So right now, CodeGrader could be our biggest competitor. And also we're trying to move in the student performance analytics because at the end we want to provide like some analytics or resources for the professors, but also to the students to understand how the engine is working, how their learning experience is improving or not. And we also perhaps some in like the short term try to work with learning management systems, which is basically the core sources or the platforms where actually software educations work. I'm going to talk a little bit of customer segments. We started internationally, as you can see, US, Singapore, Peru. We're trying to narrow that customer segment specifically to the US. That is something that we want to validate in the coming weeks. We're starting to also interview some community college, state college, not only at university level, to understand the size of the market and how the potential customers are desirable to actually spend money on our product or not. And for next week, in terms of value proposition, again, we're trying to understand if the problem that is facing by universities and K-12 is also replicated in community college. Also, more in details in the US educational system, if you're actually going to solve an existing problem or not. Also validate the channels, if the direct sales is the correct channel or not, or who we have to approach to actually sell this product in an institution. And finally, the revenue model to understand if a subscription fee or like implementation fee in a batch or like per separate or also in licenses could work to actually sell this product at the end market. And that's it.
Yeah, sure. It was my honor to meet with your team, and I wanted to just say that you have some real challenges, as well as everybody in the class. But let's pick one of the challenges you have that might be generalizable for the whole class. This is a B2B SaaS play, and B2B SaaS has a challenge in this class in terms of who to interview. Do you interview the user? Do you interview the channel? Do you interview the economic decision maker? Do you interview the secondary beneficiary, the student, if it's post-secondary? So your interview process is going to be complex. Some of the people are going to be easy to access, and some are going to be hard. The lower down on the pyramid, the easier it is. For instance, instructors, teachers would be easy. Users, students, if they're going to interface with the system, would be easy. So designing your attack on interviews is going to be challenging. You have a good set of interview strategies. Another thing we discussed was what is the product in your heart of hearts do you think you're building? What's your instinct? What's your intuition? And then you don't want to build just a product to meet today's opportunity, because today's opportunity is going to be solved by the people who are already in the market. So you have to anticipate about a 5-year timeline of what you're going to be up against 3 to 5 years from now in the marketplace, and be building a product or providing a value that meets that objective. And in a business-to-business environment like this, in a SaaS environment, you have very sophisticated solutions already in the marketplace. So a good starting point is to really deconstruct the solutions in the market today, like Canvas as the one you identified. And that's your minimum viable product in a way, so it's already in the market. You're going to have to at least either provide a distinctly different type of market niche product market fit, or if you're going to be a broad product like that, you're going to have to at least provide that plus. And that plus may be AI, it may be something else, because Canvas and those people are going to be stuck in solving today's problems. And they won't be able to execute perhaps. You might say, how can we compete with somebody who's very established? It's because you're going to be striving for a market that's going to arise, or a segment or an opportunity is going to arise. These are all things we discussed, and they may be generalizable for everybody in the room. And it's a bit different than a consumer product, where consumer products are more like fashion. In other words, I mean, it's more like user trends and pop media trends and other things. So the level of interviews, this gets around to your job, the level of interviews is different. If you're consumer focused, you ought to be saying, it's not 100 interviews, I need 250 or 300 interviews. And I ought to do 50 for next week. You know, just to get a lot of bottom of the pyramid stuff. But in a business-to-business environment, it's much harder to do that. So everything has its own context. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with you.
Would you put up slide 5 for me, please?
Sure.
By the way, we need PDF files, not PowerPoint files, so any of you who might have accidentally done a PowerPoint, please change it to a PDF. If you run that, so interviews don't exist in a vacuum. They're really part of an experiment, right? We're going to interview 5 of these people, we're going to ask them these questions. And the question when you design an experiment, this is an interesting one, let's talk about it for a minute, sort of class-wide. What are we going to learn? What are we going to see? Do I know the price? No, free demo, I might sign up, but do I know it costs $1,000 a day? Why bother? So there's some sense of interest. And if you're going to run an ad on Google Ad, how are you going to find these people? Where are they going to come to? Is part of the whole comprehensive nature. We're not going to do Q&A now and that, but in general, you're designing an experiment, right? And what would success look like? I want to get 10 people to fill it in, and at least 3 have got to want a demo. That could be an experiment. By the way, if you only get 2 to come, then it might not be that it's not a good product, it's the way you found the source of the leads. So a lot of moving parts, but if it is, we're going to run Google AdSense, or we're going to do emails, we're going to go door to door and knock on the doors of people at different schools, and don't just stay here, go to Cal State Fullerton, go to, Stanley, wherever you are. But it's also got to be an economic buyer, because I can tell you that most teachers don't have a budget to buy educational efficiency tools. So even if the teachers like it, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got a sale. So understanding, as Jerry was saying, the complexity of any one of your markets, the experiment design has to be worth running and quantifiable, so you know if you've got a win. Sam and Alan, you got any?
Yeah, we just have one last clear comment. Linda, do you want to share with your comment? I think it's quite close to what you were saying.
Yeah, I had a friend who's working on a similar project last year, and he talked to a couple of public school teachers, and the biggest concern that they have is that you have to sell directly into school districts in the United States. You can't sell to individual schools, and then from there, the school district has a little budget, and they also come across the uphill battle of teachers not wanting school districts to pay for software when they should just be paying the teachers a livable wage. So there's a lot of politics that goes on to that, which creates a lot of tension. So my question is, how would you get teacher buy-in? Because that's going to be part of the battle, is getting the teachers to actually use it, because they don't want to use tools that they feel the school district is shoving down their throats when they should be paying them instead.
That's a great point. It's too early for them to answer that one,
Yeah.
right? So great sensitivity. So there's a standard slide, and I don't remember the week, but I think it's like week 5 or 6 that you're all going to prepare, which is sort of a deal flow. How do you take funnel and go through the sales process, and who has to touch it, and what is the value proposition essentially for each level of the value chain as you go through that decision. So you're talking to that complexity about teachers and Jim mentioned the economic buyer. So when you you shouldn't wait until we ask you to prepare that slide to be doing that type of thinking. You might look ahead and see what that slide looks like.
Right, so if we hit the stop button for a moment, before the applause come in, all of you will also experience something called a saboteur. Someone who doesn't want this to happen. It disrupts their job or their economic model, and it may or may not be a deal killer. So as we do these future charts that will come up in the videos, the content, we'll kind of do the flow of who are the influencers, who are the buyers, who are the saboteurs, and what are your strategies to address those. Okay? But for now, thank you, Upgrade. And again, Sam and Alan, give us a warning and stop and start the videos for us. We're good. Pressure's on.
She's unforgiving.
Okay. Hey everyone, we are Team Jones. So just to give you guys like a brief overview of what our idea is, it's basically, there are about 1,000 budgeting apps out there for the small, everyday purchases. There's really not a whole lot of like good advice that you can turn to for the bigger purchases in life. So things like buying a car or moving to a new city. So that's the problem that we are seeking to address. To begin with, we have focused primarily on young professionals, in large part because we think this is an underserved group. I think probably a lot of people in this room have had the experience of buying a car or something along those lines and just feeling like, hey, I really don't have the tools that I need to make an informed decision. And like, hey, if I were to not buy this car, what else could I go out and do with that money? So for this first week, as I was saying, we focus primarily on young professionals. General takeaway that we got from those interviews was that, like, yes, there is a sense that young professionals are yearning for greater customized guidance on large-scale, major life financial events. We have a few other hypotheses of like certain demographics that could benefit from personalized financial planning advice. Just to name a few, college students, gig workers, aspiring entrepreneurs. One of the things that we've been talking about a lot recently is that this is like a really large problem space. I mean, and we think that there's a lot of people who in theory could benefit from improved financial planning. So how do we go from this like really large problem and focus on the groups who are most relevant to us? One of the things that we discussed with our mentor Susan, shout out Susan, is that we want to focus on groups that have some sort of triggering life event that will give them some sort of impetus to use our product. And for that reason, going forward, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in future slides, two demos that we're really going to focus on are young couples and recent immigrants who have high incomes. I'll get to the reasons for that in some future slides. Just to touch very briefly on the business model canvas, a couple things that I want to shout out here. The two customer segments at the top there that I mentioned earlier, I think those are the two key customer segments that we want to learn more about in the coming weeks. Additionally, we've been thinking about this quite a bit, and we think that probably the best way to deliver this information to folks is through the creation of a customized ChatGPT bot. Super original. One other thing actually that I want to call out here on this canvas is that, I think it did make it into this final version of our presentation, we're also considering, in some sense, adding some kind of social component to our app. Although, we can discuss a little bit more later what that might look like. talking a little bit more about young couples and high income immigrants. So the reason why we think young couples in particular are a particularly interesting demo is that there are two like really key triggering life events for them that could make them interested in using our personalized financial planning advice app. So weddings and then estate planning for kids at the beginning of their lives. We think those are two like potentially very compelling use cases, and we think that there's a lot that we could serve those folks at those moments. Additionally, high-income immigrants, the triggering event would be actually just coming here, and there's a sense that this is a group that is not particularly well served by, I guess, like mass media financial advice. In terms of our MVP going forward, we think that the easiest way to get some quick wins and verify some of these like hypotheses that we have is actually to just offer pro bono research service to interested individuals. It's something that we could just do. We don't have to build a ChatGPT to do this. We can just do this on our own, and be very curious to see, like, you know, do their eyes light up when we deliver this service to them? Is this something that they're truly really happy about? In terms of like a final MVP, I think that it would be feasible for us to mess around a little bit in custom GPT and build a custom financial guidance GPT. Yeah, so competitive analysis, yeah, I'll just touch on this very briefly, but the financial planning space is large. There are a lot of entities that are in some capacity distilling financial advice. Where we think our differentiation could be is by focusing on particular demo and tailoring and giving them in-depth advice at a fraction of the cost of the big players, and in an automated fashion through a ChatGPT client, something along those lines. I just want to call out that like two competitors that I think we have found particularly interesting are Facet, which is honestly doing something very similar to this, but not in an automated fashion, and Elevest, which again is doing something pretty similar to this, not in an automated fashion, and I think they're pretty interesting as well because they're targeted towards women, which is similar to our idea in that it's trying to tailor advice to a specific group of people. So yeah, going forward, our proposed experiment, number one, we just want to try to validate this hypothesis that we have about young couples and high income immigrants. We're going to talk to people. We're going to tell them about our prototype and offer them the service. Our acceptance criteria here is just, are they interested? Proposed experiment number two is, again, trying to understand like what's feasible in building a custom ChatGPT client. We want to figure out what type of quality we could expect from this bot. And yeah, plans for next week. We have quite a few things that we're trying to understand, but just yeah, high level, basically seeking to validate these hypotheses about young couples, high value immigrant populations, and a custom AI chatbot. Cool. Thank you.
So just a couple of quick comments. We spoke in office hours, and as you noted, this is a crowded space, and it's also not surprising that a number of these incumbents will be adding, generative AI to their products, and those sort of generic features will start to be pretty much the norm. So I think your instinct to focus in on specific life events and come at this from the perspective of customer segments, targeted customer segments that are dealing with financial challenges that also might be affected by external market environments. For example, the gig economy or remote work, and it's sort of a change in the way that people are working now. The incumbent products aren't necessarily designed for a lot of the changes that have happened that have really affected people's financial security and sense of ability to forecast ahead. Then looking through your interviews, it was interesting to see some of the details, and this is one of the things I think in general is really valuable. A lot of times there can be nuggets in those interviews, and one that really stuck out to me was there was a couple that was looking for childcare, and it took them a year and a bunch of spreadsheets to try to figure out how to navigate that whole market. There's nothing automated about it, apparently, and even when they came up with kind of a strategy going forward, there was an uncertainty about what to do when, one parent's working, another, the kid is sick, and just that whole kind of uncertainty. There's a whole world of financial challenges just simply around childcare. So I'm using that as an example. That's not necessarily the answer. That's not necessarily the market you want to focus in on, but it's about starting to see those hair on fire problems, because for this particular parent or couple, this was just dominating their life and an ongoing worry and concern. So anyway, I say that simply to make a couple points. One is, look for those hair on fire nugget people, reaching across the table and saying, man, if you could solve this problem for me, I would be your first customer. When can I get this? And then also thinking again about focusing in on the specific life events that can trigger new challenges, and also that are affected by changes in the market environment where the incumbents didn't necessarily design their products for the world that we're currently in. And yes, they're going to be adding, generative AI capabilities, but not necessarily addressing the urgent problems that are new and different from 5-10 years ago when those products were developed.
Henry, what was that?
Well, quick question. Within the team, are there any people who've really done more than just use a little AI, that are a little deeper in the woods? Doesn't have to be, because you can learn fast. I'm just curious. It seems overwhelming here. So first of all, there's more than just GPT, right? There's Anthropic, there's other large language models. And one fair question we all struggle with is, well, what's your moat? What's your differentiator? Because the GPT store, like the App Store, will quickly be populated. The very thin, very shallow moat that Glider has is the 25,000 teams that have used the old version before, that somehow hopes to inform a better than average output, may or may not. So it's not that there's not going to be a need for these things, but to Kim's point, there are incumbents, they'll do it, and you can possibly do it better and faster, or maybe even be a tool to help them do it. But thinking through the the customization of a generic resource is a challenge for everyone now staring at generative AI and how it's going to disrupt the world. Jerry, build away and use your mic.
Yeah. I just want to build on that point, because what struck me about this was that, incumbents will own this, right? So it's a race. But the second tier incumbents, will be vulnerable to being aggregated. Like Goldman Sachs will eat the world, Morgan Stanley will eat the world, and what's that? James, what's that one?
Raymond James.
Raymond James is going to get eaten. And so they're vulnerable relative to their spend on AI. So you may build this tool as a tool for others, and Jim mentioned this. So that may be a path to customer acquisition, because one of the challenges is that you build some great thing, and you try and get customers, and then it's a rat race against the big guys, and yada yada yada. So you might think of experiment with that. Your interviews might experiment with some of the incumbents.
Sam Allen, go ahead.
Yeah, as a last comment, maybe Henry, if you want to go. So.
Hey, we actually have the mentor here, Susan.
Thank you very much.
Use your mic.
This mic?
Touch the button.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. The other white button. Thanks to the team. I met with them yesterday and they moved really quickly and flexibly in thinking about the problems that they could solve and the type of solution they could bring to it. I think that's really key. I actually am in the middle of building a company based on AI using different types of AI technologies. So I really appreciated hearing how you were thinking about it and how to test it. I love the idea of talking to people and hearing where the pain is, because what you're really looking for are those emotional points, as well as the points that have time urgency. That's why the life moments is really critical, because it helps you both be able to isolate them, but also to establish the value. So nothing new other than thanks. It's really great to see how quickly you're moving and how flexible you are with the key idea of financial planning, and financial planning that's highly customized and affordable, and then trying to narrow in on which segment and which specific type of offer could you really make a play on.
Great. You maybe just one last one, Gabby.
Yeah, sure. My thoughts are just that the nature of these big life events means it's really going to happen. So what's the implication of whether this needs to be an app, software, or a consulting service? And so how do you communicate to the user that they should pay a larger sum to save some money because you're only going to interact with them once in the variable hours?
Just one more thing with peer comments. One thing is to ask questions, but also if you have any tips or advice, or if you can connect them with someone that you know within your network, some of those comments are quite helpful as well. But yeah, apart from that, everyone. Yeah.
All right, hello everybody. I don't present in front of crowds too often, but I'm giving a speech at a wedding this weekend, so thanks for the practice. Hi, my name is Max, and we are Power Plant. We're a team of 3 engineers, former fundraisers, former researchers, and we're trying to do we're setting out to do something which is to provide reliable and affordable electricity, and we're looking to see if we can do so in a way that competes with fossil fuels at cost. Over the last week, we've gone out and we've spoken to 11, actually now 12 people. We tried to find out what were their electricity needs. We had the original hypotheses that reliable and resilient electricity was something that people needed, something that people wanted, and something that they were not able to find affordably right now. So we talked to different rural energy consumers. We talked to a number of different healthcare administrators who really needed reliable and resilient power. We talked to 2 different agricultural workers. We talked to government officials and former folks who worked at utilities. We talked to an academic as well, one of our Berkeley professors here. What we expected to hear was that microgrids were a potential solution. For those of you who aren't aware, a microgrid is a grid that can be attached to the main power grid. It has storage and generation components, but also has the ability to island or remove itself from the grid in the case of a blackout. We expected to find that these microgrids were useful for providing reliable and resilient electricity, but had high upfront costs, and thus it was difficult to actually implement them. What we learned, what we really learned this week from talking to everybody is that we did validate that energy resilience, or rather than validate, we did hear over and over again that energy resilience and reliability is critical. Matter of fact, one comment that I heard specifically was that for utilities who need to decide in a blackout who gets power and who doesn't, it is literally a life or death decision for who may have or may not have power. But what we also learned is that cost is a real component. So you'll see a quote, 2 quotes there on the right, or I want to direct you to the second quote there that says, the overall payback calculations for microgrids are not valuable for established legacy businesses. And the reason for that we found, or one of the reasons we heard, is that there's more to installing new electricity than simply getting a Tesla power bank or getting a new generator. These are wires that might be in your walls. There's a serious physical component to this, and the life cycle cost of that is often high and hard to measure. So, as our value proposition, what we believe we're trying to do is to provide reliable, resilient electricity at a cost that's going to be affordable. We are looking right now at customers who are either in rural, hard-to-reach areas, or looking at utilities who are by law forced to serve those different areas, or going directly to farmers, healthcare providers, commercial manufacturers who don't have the luxury of being without power for any given amount of time. So what are we going to do? The MVP that we're testing right now is to see, there are really two questions. One, can we do this affordably? And two, is a proposed solution that we have going to actually address the resiliency challenges that some of these possible customer segments have? So the first question we have is, will a proposed solution actually solve that resiliency challenge? If we offered you a cheap energy storage solution with the ability to island, is that going to solve your problem, or are you still going to have these overwhelming reliability and resiliency issues? To do so, we're going to have a starting web page that we show that promises, hey, this is the service that we can provide. Will this service actually solve your problem? And what we're going to measure is to see if the folks that we show this to, if over 50% of them say, hey, this is actually something that could solve our problem. The market size for providing electricity is obviously very, very large. In the US alone, just providing to farmers, healthcare centers, and rural households over $1 trillion. When we scale it down to just those in rural populations, that's going to be over $200 billion. And then finally, when we look at our target market, the areas that are closest and most proximate to our team, California and Texas, still $30 billion plus industry. Our competitor leaf diagram, our petal diagram, looks like we have a little bit of a formatting issue there, but it's really characterized into 5 parts who are trying to get at energy reliability. That's the utilities that are legally required to provide power. That's folks who are providing clean energy storage solutions, think of your Tesla power bank or a wall box. Actual reliability hardware manufacturers, so someone like Mitsubishi or Kohler, who's actually building a diesel generator that many of our possible customer segments use. Folks who are already attempting to do customizable microgrids, and again are doing so in a way that it has very high cost. And then also folks who are creating microgrid software, so optimizing solutions for your, again, customizable existing needs. We think Power Plant could sit in the middle and have an opportunity by standardizing some parts to actually be a more affordable offering. I actually want to highlight one thing specifically there on utilities as well. You notice we've made large Truckee-Donner Public Utility District. For those of you who don't know, that's right on the edge of PG&E's coverage zone. And what separates one block from where PG&E covers in Truckee is a 30-cent difference in electricity cost per kilowatt hour. We think there's an opportunity there that we can provide something that is able to be a possible middleman to take advantage of that disparity.
Which one's cheaper?
Truckee is something like 16 cents. I think you guys might have seen PG&E, our rates just increased to 45 cents.
Donner, we got Truckee Donner.
Congrats on having a cheaper electricity.
Yeah, we're going to move up there because electricity is cheaper.
We briefly went over the test that we're looking to complete this week, but it's ultimately trying to talk to utilities to see will our